community. My father told me years ago that when he went to visit the doctor, an appointment, he would look at the various diplomas on the wall, but he would say, ultimately, he wanted to see the report card. He wanted to know exactly how the doctor did in various subjects, especially with the subject he was there to see the doctor for. So this is an opportunity for us to look at specific issues that impact the city and the faith community. I think one of the things that sometimes is missing in our exchanges is the voice of the faith community. So I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Garcia. Thank you to the Interfaith Center, to all of our participants today, because this will certainly be an opportunity for us to listen and learn from one another. I'm going to go now to Brother Lynch, who will offer a prayer.
Thank you, Rabbi Potasnik. Hello, everybody. Let me start with the prayer. May all living beings, wherever they be, near or far, here or in the universe, be free from worry or pain. May all living beings, whether seen or unseen, here or in the universe, have joy, compassion, and love. With this as a charge, we are ever mindful that of our interconnectedness and recognize in our gathering today, our essential purpose is to give and provide hope to each other, to our various communities, religious or otherwise, and to the city at large. And at the end of the day, we are ever thankful to the Almighty, the great life, that some of the candidates have agreed to participate in our roundtable discussion today. But we know that it is a blessing to have them here today, and that we must be ever mindful that often in human affairs, God has no other hands than our hands, no other feet than our feet, and no other tongue than our tongue. So let us use our gifts and times wisely. Peace and blessings to all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Minister Alston, do we have our guest with us today?
He is joining us in 5 more minutes. And so if you could actually just explain to everyone who is here today, who was on the host committee for this important conversation, that would be great, Rabbi.
All right. I hope if I exclude anyone by accident, please blame Minister Alston. It is her fault. I accept no responsibility. First of all,
everyone, we apologize for Rabbi Joe Potasnik from the New York Board of Rabbis.
Let me just firstly begin. Reverend James Lynch, who is the president of the Buddhist Council of New York, thank you for the opening prayer. We also have with us Anika Mawabi, executive director of the Muslim Community Network. I think the youngest member of our committee. We have Minister Only Love Alston, the Interfaith Center of New York Racial Justice Organizing Fellow, and she's a welcome addition to the Interfaith Center. And I can tell you this, Minister Alston, you've been on every call with us, and I see your organizing skills. So as one who sometimes is disorganized, I'm very envious of all that you do. Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis. We have Reverend Joel Gibson, who's Executive Director of the Micah Institute. And those of you who don't know what the Micah Institute does, please Google them. Great treasure here in New York. Joel, you do such fabulous work for us. Ravi Vedyanat, I practiced that all night. Director of Religious Affairs of the Hindu Temple Society of North America. Thank you, Ravi. You're an important voice. And I think one of the things I've learned over the years is we sometimes have the usual participants, but we don't look to enlarge the circle. And now with your involvement, we certainly have made it a little more embracing. We have Bishop Raymond Rivera, a well-known figure in New York. He's founder and president of the Latino Pastoral Action Center. I don't think I've ever been to a protest in my life where Bishop Rivera is not there leading the charge. So we thank you. Jerry Goldfeder was going to be on this call, but I think he's called away for an emergency. But Jerry is very involved and a great election lawyer and one who has taught us much about ranked choice voting. If you haven't learned about the process, go to Jerry Goldfeder at Strzok, and you will find he's a wealth of knowledge. And I mentioned Reverend Chloe Breyer now, who's the executive director of the Interfaith Center of New York. I've come to know and I'm privileged to know Reverend Breyer for a number of years and have learned much from being with her. And we also have Reverend Dr. Serene Jones, who is the president of Union Theological Seminary, a very important institution in our city. Minister Austin, have I mentioned everybody on the committee?
You're on mute.
I give a special acknowledgement to supporters from the Interfaith Assembly on Housing and Homelessness, Mark Greenberg, and also the Labor and Religion Coalition of New York, Rabbi Michael Feinberg. We are so grateful for all you do and for you joining us in this effort. So thank you so much.
And
All right.
also for Shvana from Sadhana, Progressive Hindu Coalition. And Robin Reese, who's here from Union.
By the way, I think one of the lessons that I've learned, and all of us, I think, need to learn, is when we have our interfaith gatherings, look around and ask who is not at the table. Because I think for so long, we knew who was at the table, but we didn't do enough to include others. It was Mother Teresa who said that very often we draw circles too small, and we only include those who look like us, think like us, sound like us, but we don't make the circle larger. And I think one of the things we've been able to do of late is to enlarge that circle and have voices that have not been at the table and need to be at the table. So we look forward to everyone's participation. Are we awaiting Commissioner Garcia, Minister Alston?
Yes, we just received correspondence. She'll be on a little past 12:15, which was her estimated arrival time. So if we can be just a little patient with Ms. Garcia, it is a week before the primary, so we're grateful to her and Ray McGuire for being with us. But just to speak a little bit more to what Rabbi has discussed, Reverend Peter Cook in the New York State Council of Churches, we so appreciate you being on here, and let me move you over, Peter, if that is okay. So the reason for Face2Faith was to give the mayoral candidates an opportunity to interact with the full diversity of New York City's faith community. So we are one of the most spiritually diverse and spiritually active cities in the country, if not the world. And so it's really important that with all that is going on in our city, especially around racism, that we have representation, not just from the Abrahamic faiths, but from our Eastern faiths, that we, and my panelists, Rabbi, and Reverend Chloe, if you all could mute until you speak. I think Reverend Chloe, you might have some feedback. But I just wanted to speak quickly to why it's important that we have the full representation. If we don't have the full representation of New York's faith communities, then we leave out people of color, low-income people, women. And so that is why we came together across all of our differences. And for a couple of months, we're working on this. And I'm grateful to everyone. And we appreciate the patience, but while we're waiting for Ms. Garcia. And so I'm not sure if anyone else from the planning team would like to share anything while we're waiting for Ms. Garcia.
Hi, this is
Oh, and
Catherine.
she is here. Well, right on time.
The commissioner is here.
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
Commissioner is in the house.
It's great to be with you. It's great to see so many of you again.
Commissioner Garcia, it is an honor for us, and thank you. I also want to take a moment to say thank you to your staff. I had the opportunity of speaking with Lindsay, I think it's Lindsay Green and Alex, and the promptness, the professionalism which they display speaks much about you as well. So thank you all. Commissioner, one of the things that I've learned in my life, it's they don't put up statues for critics. They put up statues for authors. And I find there are many people who find it easy to criticize, but don't come forward and present ideas that are going to help us grow as a city. That's why this kind of discussion is so important for us. So we have the representatives of the various faith groups. Catherine Garcia, each one of us will try to convert you to our own particular faith. Whoever wins gets a special prize.
It's
But,
not a competition. I can
That's-
love you all.
See, already you gave the right answer. All right, why don't we begin with Anika Nawawi, who's Executive Director of the Muslim Community Network. Anika?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi Joe, and thank you, Catherine, for being here today. My question to you is, given the diversity of New York City's faith community, can you share one example of how you have or will work with multi-faith community to accomplish a goal, and to do this without creating division and hurting the sentiments of one community over another?
Oh, I am excited to be able to work and unify everyone across this city. We have so much to bring to the table, and it will make us come out of COVID stronger. I believe that we need to have the faith community communicating with the mayor's office all the time. Not only mayor's office telling you, but you telling me what the needs are. But for example, when I was working on the food program, which during the darkest days, we were literally building and rebuilding and retooling, I was talking to people in the faith community about what the needs were, because I didn't want anyone to go hungry. And I knew that there's, of course, lots of religious requirements around food, as well as cultural requirements around food. And so having the faith community at the table, helping to craft solutions, is incredibly important to me.
Thank you. That was with Hurricane Sandy, wasn't it?
No, this was more recently during COVID.
Oh, during COVID. Okay. All right. Let's go to Minister Only Love Alston of the Interfaith Central New York Racial Justice Organizing Fellow. Commissioner, when your name is Only Love, you have to be the most popular person in the interfaith community, and she's extremely popular.
Good morning, Ms.
Good morning.
Garcia, Commissioner Garcia. We pray a lot for Rabbi Joe. So, but in all seriousness, my name is Only Love, Minister Only Love, and I was born and raised in East New York, Brooklyn, one of the 12 communities in New York City that sends the most people to New York State's prisons. And for interfaith leaders, one issue that has constantly come up is the issue of reentry, returning citizens, how we welcome home those who are being released from our jails and prisons. And so we wanted to ask you, if you were elected as mayor, would you appoint a reentry director, someone from the reentry community, to almost serve as a reentry SAR to oversee reentry issues in our city? And so thank you again for being with us.
I don't feel as special. I'm not one love. I feel like that is what we should all actually be focused on. How can we care more about each other as humans? And I am absolutely committed to finding solutions to big problems and not papering over them. Having a reentry director is part of how you think about doing the long-term solution rather than the short-term bandage. We know that if we don't connect people to things like housing or to food as they re-enter, we just pay for it in the shelter system, or we pay for it again in the criminal justice system. This is not healthy for families, but it also, even before that, how can the faith community help us divert our young people out of the criminal justice system? How can they play a much bigger role for someone who maybe made a mistake and can be sort of put on the right path rather than a path that involves the criminal justice system? And I view the faith community as being particularly suited to be part of assisting our young people on making sure they pick a different goal. But it's also why, I want to make it so that there is a guaranteed job for anyone 16 to 24 and use the federal stimulus money for that in the public, the nonprofit, and the private sector. Because if you have a job and you got to get up and go to work, it's very hard to be involved in the criminal justice system because you're busy. Those of us who work all day know it's like there's no time for that. And so smart solutions to things like crime and using the faith community to really leverage your reach and your trust that you have with people across the city.
Commissioner Garcia, one of the things that we find horrifying is the rise in hate crimes. You're talking to people in the interfaith community who over the years have worked assiduously to achieve a respectful relationship with one another. All of our religions are predicated on the foundation of respect. If we don't have that, then what do we have? And yet, what we see in the book and what we see in the movie are apart from one another. So we have an office to combat hate crimes in New York City. You're thinking, should you become mayor, what will you do to confront this challenge through that office, through your own leadership? Any ideas you want to suggest as well?
We've seen a real rise in anti-Asian hate crime, but also anti-Semitism. And you just feel like who's the next group that's going to get othered and be scapegoated for whatever it is that's happening. So it's not only standing together always, though I am tired of standing at vigils and marches around this issue. I'm just tired. We need to get it under control and to really stop it. We have to make sure that we are identifying and that people are coming forward and reporting it so that we have our resources where they need to be. But also beyond that, funding the hate crimes unit in PD, we've got to do a curriculum that talks about how every group has contributed to New York City and that we are all New Yorkers. Because when we other ourselves, we lose the power that we have and what makes this city strong.
One of the most powerful scenes that we've tried to convey is people of different faiths standing together.
Yes.
Reverend Breyer and I were together with other faith leaders in Brooklyn recently in front of a mosque that had been desecrated, in front of a church that had been desecrated. We've stood in front of synagogues. That's important, but obviously being proactive, as you just indicated, is very important. So we don't have to stand there in solidarity after the fact, after a crime has been committed. Let's go to Reverend Joel Gibson of the Micah Institute. The Hebrew is Micah. I know some people say Micah, but it's the Micah Institute, the Hebrew. Reverend Gibson?
I appreciate that, Rabbi Joe, but I'm going to pass this question on to Mark Greenberg, and I'm going to take number 6.
Okay. Mark?
I'm number 3 then on housing. Is that correct? Okay. So Commissioner Garcia, it's great.
Also.
Yes, I'm Mark Greenberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing. I think we were on a forum earlier with the New York Housing Conference, and it's great to see you again. And let me just say I have tremendous respect for the work that you've done and what you've given to the city, and it's great to be with you today. So we know that currently the New York City homeless population is estimated around 80,000. And we know that New York's faith communities have been very engaged in serving those who are homeless. But I wanted to ask you, if you were elected mayor, what would you do to create truly affordable housing in New York City? And what role would you imagine, how would you imagine partnering with the faith community and achieving those goals?
Again, this has been one of the things that is in COVID, we have seen just the escalation in the number of homeless. And I view it as multi-pronged. There is first and foremost just the issue of affordability. And we have to build more. We have to eliminate discriminatory zoning and allow there to be multifamily homes across the city in transit-rich areas. We need to use our city subsidy money to create 50,000 units of its deeply affordable housing, less than $30,000. We need to legalize SROs and micro apartments in this city and look to convert where we can, depending on how we come out of COVID, whether or not that's office spaces or hotels. Stranded asses is how I put them. And that's sort of the first piece on affordability, and partnering with folks in this community is obviously, I know some of you are actually even builders. But for those who are really struggling with street homelessness, oh, I forgot one thing. I am happy to see that the council increased the voucher. It was the silliest thing. We give people a voucher you can't use anywhere. And we have to ensure that there aren't any unintended consequences and that they lose any other benefits for having that voucher. But for street homeless, where we know people are suffering from usually a mental health or substance abuse issue or both, that we are building truly supportive housing. And I know so many who have done work in this area. We need to have you continue to do work in this area and to expand, because it's a model that works. It's a model that has really been shown to get people back on their feet. Suddenly they're getting a job. Suddenly they're connecting to their families. They need a room with a door, and they need services on site that help them keep that room with a door, because housing heals. It allows you to do everything else. So I know that we are going to be connected at the hip, so that we are solving the problem and not having people sleep on our streets, where even if they don't have a mental health or a substance abuse issue, their physical health declines incredibly fast.
Okay,
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
next person will be Ravi Vaidyanath, Director of Religious Affairs of the Hindu Temple Society of North America. Ravi.
Namaste. Thank you for being with us, Commissioner Garcia. Of course, you hinted something about food problem in the first question. So my question is going to be related to that. You see, since inception in 1977, our temple served food as a gesture and also as an act of giving, as per our religious guidelines. In fact, our temple used to serve on an average, about 50 people every day. We serve food. Gradually increased 200, and for the past 18 months, due to COVID, now it has swept to more than 500 per day. So we are serving more than 500 people food packets every day, and the hunger and food insecurity continues to plague New Yorkers day by day. And with a lot of immigrants in the city, a SNAP or EBT food program does not resolve the need. So I would wish to know, how will you be addressing this?
Yeah, we saw food insecurity go for, well, still shocking, over 1 million people pre-COVID to over 2 million people. And during the height of COVID, the Get Food program was delivering 1 million meals a day and distributing another 500,000. It is shocking in this city that we have such incredible food insecurity. We do need to make sure that anybody who is eligible for SNAP is getting SNAP, because that allows them first and foremost to get their own food, choose their own food, and that we allow delivery of SNAP. So if you're in a food desert and you have SNAP, you can get a Peapod to bring you what you want. And that is possible to do now. We just need to make it so that we get through the bureaucracy. But for those who are undocumented, having a robust food pantry network is also critical. And what I saw when I was running the food program is it was not distributed across the city. There are certain parts of the city that have really strong emergency food pantries, and there are some where there just aren't any when you look at a map. And having us work together to make sure that we are either citing or working with community organizations to have food pantries accessible to everyone is very important to me. And funding through the the Department of Human Resources that is done equitably so that everyone is getting the resources of the city to support their food pantries.
Thank you.
One of the things, Commissioner, that I think we've seen during COVID is that all of us are potentially vulnerable. And I was talking to someone who's overseeing a food pantry, and he noticed that one of the recipients had been a contributor to the program itself. And now he found himself in dire straits, and he was now receiving the food. So this food insecurity is not something that's just over there. Someone else's, it really impacts and could impact all of us. So it's extremely important. I don't see Bishop Rivera, but Reverend Gibson, why don't you ask your question of the Micah Institute?
Yes. Commissioner Garcia, this is the Reverend Joel Gibson, Executive Director of the Micah Institute. And I am delighted to spend a little bit of time with you. I'm one of those that's still undecided, and it's very important for me to listen to you. So thank you for your time today. As you know, New York is known for many things. One of the things that we are known for, at least inside of New York, is that we're very compassionate. More than 75% of people here are religious or spiritual, and we care about one another. And, New York has a number of asylum seekers that come to New York City. I'm wondering if you, as the elected mayor, would consider establishing a training partnership between the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs and the religious community to do training for the members of the religious community to assist asylum seekers. And rather than a yes or no answer, if you thought that that was wise, do you ever have any ideas about how you might accomplish that?
Yes, and we should be actually a more compassionate country, not just a compassionate city, to take in people who are fleeing dire circumstances. You're not seeking asylum because you have a choice. You are seeking asylum because you have no choice. And we need to support everyone with the full breadth of the city government and, with open hearts towards people who are clearly suffering. And yes, you can have a training program, and it is about understanding what those who are asylum seekers need. And we have lots of resources. I'm not only talking in government, but if you think about the International Rescue Committee is located in New York City, which deals with displaced persons around the world. We have to use all of these to say, how are we going to support these people? How are we going to deal with their trauma, with their basic needs, and with what their future might look like? And usually, if it's a family, what do their children need? And all of you have such great skills, but we need to make sure that we are creating a real program. And that is, you identify the office, you identify how many people we are planning to serve, so you understand how much training is required, and to make those hires happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And Anika did such a great job on the first question. We're going to give her one more as well. Anika Nawabi, Executive Director of the Muslim Community Network.
Thank you. So, Catherine, a lot of nonprofits, some of them who are on this call today, we were all in responsive mode, when COVID-19 hit. And what the pandemic exposed were the long-standing economic inequalities. And in light of this, in your first 100 days, what policy will be adopted that will address racial and economic inequalities to pull New Yorkers out of poverty?
Thank you for that question. It did, obviously, COVID, and I was actually reading something this morning about how hard hit in California the Hispanic community was at much younger ages. Very, very young people being taken from us. First of all, we need to remember that 30,000 people died. And that means that they have children, they have spouses, they have parents, they have siblings. There is a lot of trauma out there. And being prepared for that across all of our city services, what's going to happen in schools? Do we have socio-emotional support when they walk in the door? What are we doing for older adults who've been isolated? But we also we've got to get this economy back open. And to do that and do that in a fair way, there has to be opportunity for everyone, which is why I have a guaranteed jobs program for kids 16 to 24. We also need free childcare for those who make under $70,000. One of the things that it also exposed was that women were the backup plan. And 1 in 4 women are saying that they are going to step away from work. Childcare is like infrastructure. You can't go to work if you don't have childcare you can trust. Just like you can't go to work if you can't get on a subway. And for a woman who steps away from the work world, this is hundreds of $1,000s of lost earnings over the course of your lifetime. You don't actually ever make it up. And that's just personal to me. You know, I was a working mom. I understand how hard it is to do this in regular times. You know, you're talking about for that type of childcare, it's $15,000 a year. It's an insane amount of money. So we need to give people the opportunity, both for training and connecting our training with what our economic development goals are, making sure all of our youth get internships and opportunities, that they're guaranteed jobs. And then we need childcare so that we have we're losing our productive citizenry because they can't go to work.
Okay. Now, the last question is going to be asked by Reverend Chloe Breyer, the Executive Director of the Interfaith Center in New York, and then we'll have closing comments by Reverend Dr. Serene Jones of Union Theological. Reverend Breyer?
Thank you so much, Commissioner Garcia. I want to take a panelist prerogative to do one quick follow-up question from the very first. Because Minister Onlilove asked you about the reentry czar, and I heard you say that you were that was something that you were in favor of. But is it something that you would commit to actually making happen? That's my follow-up.
Yes, because it's the right thing to do. Because the way that we do it now costs us a ton of money and has a terrible outcome. And so having someone who can coordinate housing and food and educational opportunities and job training so that you actually don't end up back in the criminal justice system. Those are investments worth making.
That's great, because that's exactly what we in the Just Reentry Coalition have been thinking too. I wanted to say that the Interfaith Center of New York for 25 years has been doing civics training for grassroots faith leaders. And my question to you is how, what you will do as mayor to allow very diverse faith leaders and their communities to participate in strengthening the civic fabric of New York City.
Yeah, well, actually, I have to say, I'm hoping that we can reach out to you now to make sure that folks are going out to vote. Our numbers on early voting have been extraordinarily low. Like, people are not voting, and this is people need to exercise their right to vote. This is a critical, consequential election. We have to have, for our young people, some basic civics education in school about why you need to participate and why you need to vote. I want to be advocating also at the state level for same-day registration. That there are real opportunities, and we're moving, that we do the opposite of Georgia or Texas, that there are more opportunities to vote here than anywhere else, because I think that's critical. But faith leaders and our young people, and being able to move forward in the civic fabric, and it can also manifest itself not only in the direct democracy, but how are we participating in our community boards? How are we participating in all of these different voices in the city that we do need people to be a part of? I actually think it might be the slight one upside of Zoom, which, even though not that I'm not enjoying being on Zoom with you, but I so miss people that I will very much enjoy seeing people in person. But I do think it might be opening up. So if you can't physically get to a meeting of your community board or a public hearing, that you can see it on Zoom at the same time and be able to interact with what is happening in real time. So it's not just a video you watch later, but that you are actually a participant. I think that will be helpful.
Commissioner Garcia, we have about a minute and a half left. Let me just mention to you, I asked someone recently to name any sanitation commissioner in the history of New York, and you were the only name that was presented. All right, so that says a lot about the work you did when you were commissioner. 1 minute, why Catherine Garcia?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, first of all, and for all of the work that you do. You know, I'm running for mayor, not because I want the title of mayor, but because I actually do want to do the job. And everything that I've committed to, it's ambitious, but it's achievable. I want to plan big and deliver bigger. And that is what I have done for the last 14 years as a public servant. In times of emergency, during Superstorm Sandy, getting our treatment plants back online, and during COVID, setting up a team that did deliver 230 million meals to date to people who are hungry or really homebound because of COVID. I'm running because I know that I can actually deliver for New Yorkers a healthier, safer, more livable city where we are making our commitments to our people and our investments in our people, but we are also making our investments in our climate, that we are greening 150 million square feet of space, that we are electrifying our school buses, that we are cleaning up our air. I want to have the vision, the hustle, the experience to get it done.
And you promise you'll meet with faith leaders after the election as well, not just before,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
right.
I met with faith leaders during my tenure. So, and you know, the benefit of being a uniform manager is that I had quite a few faith leaders who did technically work for me. You get to
All
have
right.
chaplains of many faiths.
Commissioner Catherine Garcia, thank you so much. Good luck to you. And we've enjoyed this meeting today. We've learned, we've listened, and that's what this is all about. It's so important for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Minister Only Love.
Yes, and so now, Rabbi, we are going to move on to Mr. Ray McGuire. And so I will hand it back to you. And we thank Commissioner Garcia so much for being with us today.
All right. Mr. Ray McGuire, thank you for being with us during this very busy time in your life as well.
Hello, how you getting along?
There you are.
How we doing?
All right. So I know you've said before the cavalry's not coming to help us.
Ain't no cavalry.
I brought the cavalry here. You're going to look around, you're going to see a different kind of cavalry. This is the spiritual cavalry that is really a blessing in this city. We're very fortunate. The relationships we have with one another, I think, form a template of how people of different faiths can really communicate and cooperate with each other. So should you become mayor, just know you have a great support system that has been in place. And I've been with you before. I'm a friend of Charlie Rose.
There you go. There you go.
Not that, the other Charlie Rose, you know.
I know which one. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. We have a number of questions from representatives of different faiths who want to share their concerns with you. So let's go right away to Anika Nawabi, who's the executive director of the Muslim Community Network.
Hello, Anika. How are you?
Good. How are you, Ray? Thank you so much.
I am well. Thank you. What do you got, Anika?
Well, what I have for you, Ray, is that New York City is a very diverse faith community, right? So share one example of how you have or will work with multi-faith communities to accomplish a goal while not creating divisions and favoring one group over another.
First of all, thank you for having me. And while I have said that there is no cavalry, there's no plan B, the prayer warriors have always been on the front line. So I include you all as the prayer warriors, and we would have no hope without you. Given what's taking place with others, you all have stood fast and my expectation is that you will continue to hold fast, and that is the faith that I have, and this is a walk of faith. So your question is, what is the one example of that which I have done or that which I will do?
That you have or will do to connect and engage with faith communities without creating divisions.
So what I have done, and the list is difficult to choose amongst your children, if you will. What I have done is I've worked with the faith-based community in the midst of a crisis to make sure that we got food and PPE into different communities, into different hospitals. I've worked to make sure that they got educated on how they access the PPP, some of the technology and some of the institutions I've introduced them to. That was one that brought the city together. If I look at what I've done during COVID, in addition to the PPP and the PPE, making sure that we got food into different hospitals. I've also worked in the world of education, making sure that I invested there. So if I go down the list of things that I have done, it is reflective of things that I will do.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to go now to Minister Only Love Alston, who is the Interfaith Center of New York Racial Justice Organizing Fellow. Only Love?
Hi,
Dr.
good
Ray.
good afternoon, Mr. McGuire. I had the pleasure of meeting with you and your wife in December, I think, with the Daughters for Justice, Reverend Kaji Dosa
Yes.
and Dr. Deborah Jenkins and Apostle Stacy, who's on. So we are very concerned about criminal justice. And I was born and raised in East New York, Brooklyn, one of the 12 communities in New York City that sends the most people to New York State's prisons. And so we wanted to know, if you were elected as mayor of New York City, would you appoint a reentry director to oversee reentry, someone who is from the reentry community? Because we have many who are coming home, but they don't have anything to come home to. So would you commit to appointing a reentry czar for our city? Thank you so much.
You know, the answer to that is unequivocally yes. We do need to appoint a reentry czar, and we need to empower that reentry czar to work with you all in the interfaith community to make sure that we, one, have a place of safety and credibility, which is going to be clear, and a place where people feel connected. We need to reduce recidivism, and we need to do it in the first 90 days, which, as you know, is the most high risk period. We haven't done enough. So we need to work with the reentry person, if you will, the head of that. I will empower that person. I will identify the leaders, many of whom exist on this Zoom screen, to make sure that we have the right funds available, that we have the right programmatic approach, and that we start before they exit, that we start early. There are programs out there, Get Out, Stay Out. There's a Doe Fund, all of which, because they have been well organized, they have been able to intervene and to reduce recidivism. Remember, in the community in which I grew up, there were at least 3 institutions on which we could rely as a child. One clearly is a church, because I grew up in the church. And as I said from the start, this is a faith-based walk for me. It always has been and always will be. That's number one. The other is a school, which we know today has not done that which it should be doing. And the other is community center. So the school is at risk, community centers are at risk. The last organization that exists, which clearly is on the front line, is a faith-based community. And so we need to invest alongside with the faith-based community leading the reentry. So my answer is unequivocally yes. I've gone a little bit further to see how I would scale it. But because there are so few institutions now, chaos reigns in many of our communities. We need to intervene, have a high sense of urgency to reduce that chaos, because now it is overwhelming most of our communities.
Thank
McGuire,
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGuire, I want to ask you the next question. We've seen the horrific rise in hate crimes. I was talking to a member of the Asian community, and she said when she walks down the street, she puts her face down because she doesn't want to be identified as being Asian for fear of attack. I've spoken to members of the Jewish community who tell me they're not going to wear the yarmulke outside, no indicia of religiosity. Coming in as mayor, how would you confront that challenge? We have an office to combat hate crimes. What more can be done? What would you introduce to try to make a difference?
Rabbit, we have an office, but we need to have this as a higher level priority. I go back to, as I've cited in many of these forums, I go back to an essay that was written in 1963 by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who says that on race and religion. And then that is the time he met Martin Luther King Jr. And in 1965, they came together. That race and religious speech, that presentation, that offering to us all was one that said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We need to strengthen the leadership of this city. Needs to come out and denounce hate crime from the pulpit of the leadership of this community. We need to make certain that we aggressively enforce. I would preserve funding for the hate crime task force and expand the resources. We also, I think, need to have a little better data, because while many of these things exist in the headlines, many of the cases go underreported. So we need to make sure that we heighten the awareness of this. We need to have a racial justice task force that includes members of this community. We need, as the leadership of the city, and I will be out front saying this is that which I denounce. We cannot allow this to exist anywhere in this city. This is the city that has got to be the most economically, culturally diverse that exists anywhere. If we don't get it right here, then the country ain't gonna get it right. So I would stand up and say I denounce it. I would stand with the faith-based leaders. I'd stand up with the cultural leaders and say we're gonna commit the resources, and anybody whom we see experiencing these hate crimes, who are the perpetrators, I don't want to make the victims the perpetrators. The victims, not the victims, but the perpetrators, that we show as an example that for which we do not stand. And I'm going to stand up and say, I don't stand for it. It's not who I am. It's not who this city is. And as a leader of this city, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we denounce it and that we eliminate it.
Thank you. Let's go to Mark Greenberg, Executive Director of the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing. Mark.
Good afternoon. Thank you. And let me just say, it's so good to have your voice as part of this mayoral conversation. And it's good to see you again. You mentioned earlier in a response to an earlier question of how the faith community is really the center pole of the community, the support when many things fail. And I want to now ask you about homelessness, which is the center of my work. And we know that there are currently probably 80,000 New Yorkers who are homeless. We're reminded that it's the full population of the city of New Rochelle. And we know that houses of worship help in many ways to assist those who are homeless and help with the housing crisis. But I wanted to ask you what your plan would be at dealing with homelessness, how you would create truly affordable housing in New York City, and what role you can envision the faith community playing as partners with you in addressing this crisis.
So we have a crisis here in large part because we haven't built this city. When we were building, we built 2.2 units of housing for every private sector job. Today, that's probably 0.7. The demand has so outpaced the supply that the city's gotten too expensive. 40+% of New Yorkers are rent burdened, which means they pay 50 to 60+% of their income in rent. Given COVID has exacerbated and exposed many of the conditions, it has gotten too expensive. So we haven't built. My plan is to go from homelessness to home ownership. First, I got to prevent the homelessness. I got to prevent that. Second, once I prevented it, I need to, if we haven't been able to prevent it, which I have a plan to help do that, we need to have the services that are available to the homeless. Number three, we need to move homelessness into homes of dignity. We know we can do this. And as I look at this, one of the plans that I will do is I have a vision where every New Yorker doesn't pay more than they can afford in rent, 30 to 40% of their income at the most in rent. And so we have to build to that. There is an example of that, which I'm describing in the Bronx, 163rd Street and Melrose, called the Bronx Common, where the rents go from $225 a month to the most you can pay is $1,999 a month. In addition to that, what is taking place is that the complex has not been ghettoized. Everybody uses the same entrance. And so you can have the formerly homeless on the same floor as somebody who can pay $1,999 a month for a 3-bedroom. It is powered by solar panels. There's a place for the elders to become involved and convene. There's a gymnasium. And yes, there's a concert hall in their restaurants. We know this can be done. And so it'll be that to that which I would commit. So it's prevention for one, and how I'm going to do that. One of the good things is that the city council has now increased the rental subsidies. And I would do that from $130 to $400 million to help prevent. We need to figure out what we're going to do when the eviction moratorium lapses. We need to invest to prevent that from taking place. We need to increase the subsidy. We need to make sure that the vouchers are actually credible vouchers. And for those whom I've met as I walk the streets who simply can't get into affordable housing, and can only resort to shelters. The reason they're resorting to shelters, the reason they're resorting to being in the streets is because the shelters are not working. Shelters are dangerous. So we need to make sure that we make certain. I don't want to continue to build shelters. I want to build homes. And what the people say to me is I go to the subway stops and sit and talk to the homeless in wheelchairs with cups. Ray, listen, I was supposed to be in the shelter for 2 to 3 months. I've been here for 2 to 3 years. Just do something. Give me a roof over my head and give me a hot plate and give me a refrigerator of some sort. But give me a place where I can have dignity. And we need to build that. I know what it's like not to have. And so we need to make sure that the least of thee, as it says in my word, is taken care of. And that's that to which I'd be committed.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Ray, we're going to go to Ravi next. I just want to say about Ravi. I remember during the COVID crisis, we talked about food insecurity. And one of the things he mentioned, he's a member of the Hindu community. Yet when giving out the food, he never asked, are you Hindu? Are you Jewish? You know, what is your faith? Everybody was hurting. He was there. So we're honored to have him with us. Ravi Vaidyanath, who's Director of Religious Affairs of the Hindu Temple Society of North America. Ravi?
Yeah. Namaste and good afternoon to all. And hi, Meguri. My question is to you is, since inception in 1970s, our temple used to serve food as a gesture and also as an act of giving, which is as per our religious guidelines. We used to serve, on an average, about 50 plus food packets every day. Gradually, it just went up to 200, and now for the past 2 years, it sweeps to more than 500 food packets per day. The hunger and food insecurity continues to plague New York City day by day, and moreover, with a lot of immigrants in the city, the SNAP or EBT food program does not meet their need. So I wish to know if you are given a chance to be elected, so how you propose to address this?
So it's a crisis. You're right, Mr. Ravi, to identify the crisis, which is, existed before COVID. It was expanding before COVID. COVID has just exacerbated it and exposed it. So what I would do is, one, I think we need to increase the funding for the emergency food pantries and soup kitchens and home delivered meals. As homelessness has no bounds. It is not identified by faith. It's not identified by gender or culture. It is just, I'm hungry. I want to feed my family. I don't have a job and therefore I can't do this and I don't have much dignity. But I know that the thing that I can do is I can hope for another day for as long as I get food in my stomach of some sort. And so we need to invest in this. I'll increase funding for emergency food pantries. We should also invest in closing what I call the last mile. Ravi, that we many of us live in transportation deserts.
Yes.
So we need to perhaps partner in a public-private partnership to pay gig economy drivers to deliver food to the disabled.
Yes.
That's another idea. We need also to think about technology and point-of-demand delivery services where we can use our garages and use the garages where we store food at night, and then during the course of the day, the last mile, we take electric vehicles of some sort to get the last mile in the communities where we have healthcare deserts and transportation deserts. So we need to think aggressively about this. I'll also increase the number of locations for the summer meals program. Now it's 400 or so. Ravi, as you know, we need to expand that because it's not sufficient. It's not getting to the people it needs to get to.
Sure.
So the summer compassion meals program, which is offered only to children, I got to include parents and caregivers. They become part of the overall city's program to fight food insecurity. So I would do just this. There are specifics that I would outline here, Ravi, some of which I've referenced to make sure that we address this urgent. This is urgent. This is as urgent as it gets.
We should also address the undocumented.
Pardon?
Undocumented also need to be addressed.
Well, that's why I'm saying if I look at places where many of the undocumented live, I live in healthcare deserts, and I live in food deserts. We need to figure out how we do public-private partnerships to get the food into the communities. And Ravi, the other thing we need to figure out is what we do with the elders, because the elders are, we're increasing the number of elders, but they tend to be the forgotten ones. I don't want any day to go by where my 95-year-old mother doesn't have the kind of food that she wants. And how does she get access to that? And you know what, Ravi, she may not know how to access Amazon Fresh or Whole Foods. She may not knows how to do that at 95. She doesn't. She and technology are not one and the same. So how do I get that into the elders, and how do we care for that? And how do we monitor to make sure that they're not going hungry? They shouldn't go hungry in one night, not one meal. Robbie, we need to intervene today.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Ray, when I first began interfaith work, one of the people I was privileged to meet was Reverend Joel Gibson, and we're very happy that he's on the call today. Reverend Gibson is the executive director of the Micah Institute, does great work in our city. Joel?
Thank you, Joe. Mr. McGuire, let me personally thank you for being on this call. With 75%, at least 75% of New Yorkers being associated with one member, some part of the faith-based community, it's important that our civic leaders and those seeking elected office understand the value of these types of conversations. So thank you for being willing to be a part of this. New York City is known for many things, and one of the things that we're known for, and those of us who live here know it, we're a compassionate city, and we care for those. We're proud to be a sanctuary city. I'm wondering what you would think about the possibility of New York City creating a partnership between the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs and the faith community to train members of that community to assist asylums are coming to the city and hope for find asylum here. And if you think that's a valuable idea, do you have any idea about how you might make that happen?
So, Reverend, the answer is that begins the conversation. I think that is one of the programs that the faith-based community can help out with, and that is to give exposure to, give training to. You know, I sit on the board of the New York Public Library, and I look at how the use of libraries has evolved into job training centers and access to Wi-Fi hotspots. During the course of the pandemic, when many of our children didn't have access to Wi-Fi hotspots, and we were able to make those available in many of the branches so they could do homework. I look at how we've used a library, and I want to begin to use a faith-based community the same way, right? We have safety in libraries. We have more churches than we do libraries. I got 2,000 or so churches. I got 88 branches in the New York City Public Library system. We need to use a faith-based community more. They can become the hub for training and for educating, not only for the immigrant community, but just think about what we can do in scaling the use of the faith-based community to train entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs. What can we do to hold technology workshops? It's a safe space. What can we do to hold vocational training workshops? So as I think about the faith-based community and the physical as well as the spiritual leadership, I think about the possibilities that exist in the faith-based community. And given that I lack infrastructure elsewhere, I would rely heavily on the faith-based community and invest in the faith-based community, not only for those who are undocumented, the immigrants, but for the existing people who have gone underserved. It cannot be, in my world, it cannot be that we worship a homeless man on Sunday and forget about him on Monday. We need to make sure that we invest. And we haven't done that. And the leadership hadn't done that. And that's that to which I'd be committed.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Let's go back to Anika Nawabi, Executive Director, Muslim Community Network. Anika.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. McGuire. As you know, the pandemic.
Please, I'm calling you Anika. Call me Ray, please.
Okay. The pandemic, as you know, has exposed long-standing economic inequalities. And in the light of this, what in your first 100 days, what policies will you adopt that will address the racial and economic inequalities to pull most New Yorkers out of poverty?
So my plan is called the greatest. Listen, we are now at a perilous moment in this city when it comes to the economy. We got $5+ billion from the US government, an avalanche of cash, and we run the risk of fiscal irresponsibility by this mayor, who, if he spends all of it this year, what we're facing, according to the Independent Budget Committee, is a $4+4+4 billion budget deficit, which unless we have a proper management, somebody who's got experience managing, which I do, the city could run into bankruptcy. And the difference between this time and what happened in the 70s when business, labor, and government came together is this thing called technology. And technology is so disruptive. So we're at a perilous moment. And unless we get this economy back up and running, our best days will be far behind us. My plan is the greatest, most inclusive economic comeback plan in the history of New York City. 500,000 jobs. Go big, go small, go forward. Go big infrastructure, fractured sewage mains and bridges, building deeply affordable housing. It cost me $2.5 billion a year, $12 billion in deeply affordable housing. And yes, getting broadband into the neighborhoods where 1.5 million New Yorkers don't have broadband, building broadband. And yes, dealing with the 100-year flood that comes every 5 years, climate resiliency. That's going big. Going small is focused on 50,000 jobs in our small businesses because they represent half of what takes place in New York when it comes to employment. 50,000 jobs. You can see the details of which are in my plan at rayformayor.com or those who are social media at rayformayor.com. But it focuses on investing $1.8 billion into the small businesses for which we can pay. Then it goes to going forward, investing in the economies of the future, in technology, and importantly, in the MWBEs, the minority women business-owned enterprises, where we have neglected. $22.5 billion we spent in 2020. 1.9, less than 5% went to the MWBEs. 8 out of 10 MWBEs got zero, nothing, bupkis. And so we need to invest in a way that we have an inclusive economy going forward. Many of those communities have been outside for so long that when they're given crumbs, they're expected to feel full. I'm not interested in giving them crumbs. Matter of fact, I'm not interested in them getting the cake. I want them to own the bakeries. And I know intentionally how to go about doing this because I've been able to create more opportunity, create more economic uplifting, create more home ownership alone as a public-private citizen, as a private-public servant alone, more than all the rest of them combined. So I'm going to invest in jobs, invest in the economy so that we all get uplifted, but it's going to be inclusive. That's what I'm going to do. And along the way, at the core of this, I'm going to get vocational training. And I want to make sure that every child has a summer job, which is part of my education plan, where we clearly have fallen down. I'm sorry, we haven't fallen down. We've just failed, when it comes to educating our children. So my plan is to create 500,000 jobs, the environment for 500,000 jobs to get New Yorkers back to work. I got no cranes in the air. I got no shovels on the ground. I got no hard hats in the field. This city's economy is going the wrong direction. We need to build it, and I have the experience to do just that.
All right. Final question from Reverend Chloe Breyer, Executive Director of the Interfaith Center of New York. Chloe?
Thank you so much, Mr. McGuire. And I just want to ask, the Interfaith Center of New York has, for the last 25 years, done civics training for grassroots and immigrant religious leaders. And the question for you that I'd like to ask is, how will you, when and if you become mayor, really allow diverse New Yorkers of different faith traditions to contribute to our civic fabric, if it were. This is really on our minds right now, as voter participation in these past few days has been so low. It's really a concerning thing where faith communities are often a place where people also can become civically involved.
So the thing that you point out, Reverend Doctor, is in that low turnout in what I've been experiencing as I've gone around to the communities, the subway stops, the churches, many of the faith-based, I've gone to the mosques, talked to the people in the synagogues, talked to the people in the cathedrals, visit the churches, is that people are losing confidence in a system that to this day has had a group of people whose sole focus has been on staying in their jobs and not serving the people, which is why you see the turnout that you're seeing, which is why I say that with every conviction, unless the faith-based community steps up here, there's very little hope. We have to rely on the faith-based community, because today, lack of investment in the faith-based community, which is the last remaining organization, there is very little hope that exists anywhere else. The infrastructure and those who have been in the infrastructure have failed New Yorkers, which is why you see the apathy. People don't think it's going to make a difference. And so the only way the difference is going to be made tangibly, visibly, is by what the faith-based community is doing civically. We clearly have a mission of faith, but part of that mission of faith is to make certain that we serve New Yorkers civically, because there's no other institution out there that's doing that. Your focus is on serving the people. You're servants. You've been anointed I believe you've been anointed to do that which you're doing, which is serving the people. I look at the track record of those who are running for office. I look at where we are. I got more homelessness. I got more violence. I got more gentrification. I have more people out of jobs, all the things that they've advertised they're doing, and we're failing educationally. It costs me $26,000 a year to send a student to a New York City school. It costs me $446,000 a year to put an inmate at Rikers. You tell me who stepped up here, Rikers or the school or the faith-based community? You tell me who's stepping up doing the job. And unless you all at the front lines, it ain't gonna happen. Depending upon the leadership you put in place, it ain't gonna happen. We need to work with you. I need for the faith-based community to step up and do more than it's done, because it's the last remaining institution out there. It ain't gonna happen without you. I wanna be bright, clear, and unequivocal. If I didn't have the faith-based community behind me, if this weren't a walk of faith, I wouldn't be where I am. So I have every conviction that unless the faith-based community steps up in partnership, the leadership of this city, and do it in a genuine way, a way in which when you speak to your maker, you say, I've done this, and he's going to say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I've given you dominion over something. I'm going to give you dominion over a whole bunch of things. Unless you step up and do that, it ain't going to happen. I want to be clear. We ain't going to get there. We haven't gotten to this point, notwithstanding all your efforts, because the people have lost, they're losing faith in the civic organization. They're losing faith in the government. The only place where they have faith is with the faith-based community. That's the only place. That's it. What my words say, when the foundation is crumbling, what will the righteous do? And unless the righteous step up to date, foundation crumbling. And we know what happened in the last days.
You ever think of being a reverend there, Ray?
I got the word. That's what got me here, okay?
Ray, I just want to say this. I think there's a story of a mother whose son became president. She said to her friends, just keep in mind, he may be president, but his brother is a doctor. So I'm thinking your mom saying, wait a minute, he went to Harvard undergraduate. He went to Harvard graduate. He was so successful in that business arena. Why Ray McGuire for mayor?
Well, why Ray McGuire for mayor? Because I'm here to serve New York City. I've been, as I said before, I've been a private public servant. My word says be known by your deeds. And if I look at the things which I've been able to accomplish with the prayers of the faithful, I live in that 91st Psalms. I've been dwelling in the secret place of the Most High. I quit my job to go do this because I think it's the right thing to do at a moment in time when New York City needs a leader in whom they can trust and whom they can believe, who's got a track record of delivering. It ain't about me. This ain't about me. This is about we. So if you want somebody in there who hadn't been termed out, who is not looking for a promotion, who's not been part of any failed administration, who's not run for any office, who's looking solely to do that which is in the best interest of New York City, then that's me. And I got a track record of having done. This is not my first time managing and leading large, complex organizations. I got a track record of having gotten it done. I've had to do more with less, and sometimes I had to do everything with nothing. I'm not like the rest of them. I'm change. It ain't about me. It's about making certain that our children and our elders are taken care of today in ways that we have neglected to take care of them up to this point. So I would ask for your vote. I'm number 4 on the ballot. I'd ask for your vote, but importantly, I ask for your prayers. As my mother says to me, for those who are believers, she says to me every night to do that which I'm going to ask you to do, and that's to pray the blood. So keep me in your faith. Keep me up in prayer. This ain't about me. This is a mission to make certain that New York City moves forward in an inclusive basis and that our best days are ahead of us and not behind us. That's where
Ray, thanks for being with the interfaith community before the election. Should you be elected, we know that you'll continue to be with the interfaith community as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a blessed day.
You as well.
Thank you. Oh, hi, I don't see Rabbi Joe. Did he sign off? Okay. I think that might have been by mistake. But we want to thank everyone who was with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Chloe Breyer, to the Executive Director of the Interfaith Center of New York, to make closing remarks.
Well, thank you, everyone. I've just noticed what good questions have come up in the chat, and I'm sorry that we didn't have time to get to more of them, but I noticed that somebody from JCRC had said that there was a resources that they had to help faith leaders let their communities get access to SNAP. So I want to bring your attention to that early in the chat if you still have that open. Also, there were questions about what were the candidates' views on land banks for affordable housing. And I'm sorry that we didn't have time to get to that, along with a lot of other questions. But it's so important to have all of you on today, and that we ourselves, I think one of the reasons perhaps also that there has been a low turnout right now is that there are so many candidates running for so many offices, and we have a whole new way of voting. So I think that we, our hope was in this series with Minister Only Love's hard work to be able to shed more light than heat on this very complex but very important election. I encourage all of you to read your voter guides, as I did this morning, and found it quite helpful. And also to remember that this is just the beginning of a racial justice interfaith platform that we will need to hold our elected officials accountable for. So you'll hear more about that. And also just to acknowledge that Union Seminary, which played such a big role in getting this off the ground, that President Serene Jones was not able to join us for personal reasons. We're so glad, Robin, that we have had you here. And also it's great, Reverend Cook, that you've been able to join us from the New York State Council of Churches, along with Mark Feinberg and Mark Greenberg and Rabbi Feinberg. So with that, I think Rabbi Potasnik, you're back. Would you like to lead us in a closing prayer?
I would. I just want to say this, that I remember years ago during the mayoral pre-election period, you would find voter guides in every house of worship. And I think it's a religious responsibility to vote. My father came to this country after the war, and when he became a citizen, he never missed an election. And he reminded me, thank God you're in a free country like America where you can take advantage of the vote. So let me just leave you with this thought. There is a town in the Midwest that has no electricity in the town hall. The only way it's lit is people bringing in a lantern. And I think each one of us, certainly as faith leaders, members of the faith communities, we have to proudly carry that lantern to bring light into our city, into the lives of one another. And that way we'll see the dawn of a new day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And kudos to the moderator. I thought he was excellent.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Minister Only Love, for all you do.
Thank you.